Hey guys, it's Lizzie again and back with another tutorial. Today we're gonna make this cute summer mini dress with an elegant hold-to cowl neck and a flirty soft cowl bag. It's pretty much beginner friendly, so if you are up for a chic, sexy, cute look without the fuss, this one is definitely for you. So first of all, you will need to print out the pattern. You can find a link to the pattern in the description box below. The pattern comes with different layers, so you can select only your size layer to print. Make sure that your printer is set to 100% scale and print the first page only. Once printed, double check the rectangular scale to ensure that it matches 5 cm or 2 inches. If it's matched, you can proceed to print the rest. Lay out all the pages in correct order according to the letter and numbers included on the top right of each page. Arrange them in the grid formation like this. Then attach the pages together by folding over the edge of one page and taping it to the previous page. You'll notice some empty spaces in the layout. This is because there's no information on those pages, so I removed them. Once the pages are securely attached, proceed to cut out the pattern pieces along the thicker lines. The thin lines are the sewing lines. Aligning the pattern straight grain with your fabric straight grain. As this dress is cut on bias, position your pattern at 45 degrees angle to the fabric edges. Remember to mark all of the notches, they are super crucial. Then cut 4 bias strips by drawing parallel lines 45 degrees to the straight grain, 3.5 cm apart. After cutting, you should have 3 pattern pieces, 2 front-facing interfacing pieces, and 4 bias strips. Again, because the fabric is cut on bias, it's naturally stretchy, so we need to stabilize some edges before sewing. We're gonna apply stay tape to prevent any distortion while constructing the dress. And if you don't have stay tape, just cut strips 1 cm wide from your interfacing, it will work just fine. On the left side of your front pattern, cut the tape to match the length from the notch under the neckline to the upper bust-out notch. On the right side where we will put buttons, cut the tape to match the length from the notch under the neckline to the upper bust-out notch. Then skip the bust-out and continue to cut the third tape from the lower bust-out notch to the last notch on the side. And then on the right side of the back piece, the side with the button symbols, cut the 4th tape from the acute angle to the last notch on the side. Then you keep the pattern paper piece attached to the fabric and bring all of them to the ironing machine. Turn the wrong side of the fabric facing up and iron to fuse the stay tapes on the corresponding edges. Now on to the next step. Take the front piece and draw 2 bust-out lines. Match them up and secure them in place with pins, then stitch along those lines. Once those dots are done, we will search the side seams, the parts that we didn't apply stay tapes. To stop the overlock stitch in the middle of the seam, I simply lift the foot, rotate the garments 90 degrees, and continue stitching for a few stitches. I leave around 1 cm thread tail and just pull those threads to enclose a knot. The result should come out clean like this. Alright, next we're gonna tackle the neckline. With the front piece right side facing up, we follow the pleat direction on the pattern to fold our neckline pleats like this. Do it on both sides and then run a straight stitch to secure them in place. On the back neckline, we will attach 2 buttons and 2 button loops. In order to do the button loops, you can either purchase those thin wrapped satin cords and use them directly, or if you can't find matching color cord and want to make it yourself, here's how. Grab a bias strip and fold them in half lengthwise with the wrong side facing out. We will make a tiny seam using tapering technique, which means we start with a wider seam first and then slowly tapering down. Here I start at 1 cm seam allowance, and then you can see that I moved the strip to make the seam smaller. This trick is gonna help you to easier turn the tube inside out later. Okay, now trim the seam allowance and then use a hand needle with a thick double thread. Insert the thread into the wider end of the strap. Make sure that it is secure, and then with the eye of the needle, Insert the needle into the casing and feed it all the way through. Then tug on the thread to turn the tube right side out. Now you can use the needle eyes to coax any stubborn bit inside. Once you can get it started, the rest is easy. Here it is. Pull it all out and you will have a tiny spaghetti strap. And then in order to turn them into button loops, you will have to take your button and check how much in length that you need for the loops. Don't forget to count 2 cm extra for the seam allowance. Then cut 10 even pieces for 10 buttons for this project. Next, we will take 2 out of these 10 to attach to the back neckline. Fold them in half, position the first loop on the top right side of the front neckline, but leave 1 cm for seam allowance. The second loop should be positioned under the first one, 1 cm away from the bottom neckline. Then we're gonna run a straight stitch through to keep them in place. Next up, grab the front facing and with the wrong side together, place the 2 interfacing pieces on the front facing like this, and then iron it to fuse the interfacing onto the facing. Then fold this smaller edge by 7 mm and press it flat, and then fold it again for 7 mm and press it flat again, so that we create a double fold, and we're gonna stitch near to the edge. So this seam can be just overlocked if you prefer a quicker way to finish. Now place the front facing onto the front piece with the right side facing up, and then pin all around. Take it to the sewing machine and straight stitch them together. We also need to understitch to prevent the facing from rolling towards the outside. Trim the 4 corners to reduce bulk and also the curved lines to make it easier to turn them right side out. You won't be able to understitch the corner completely, so don't worry, just stitch as close as you can. Give it a good press. I prefer not to iron the upper neckline seam completely since I love a natural round fold neckline. However, it's up to you. If you prefer a sharp appearance, you can iron it flat. Moving on to the back piece, from the acute angle on both sides, fold the top part down with the wrong sides facing each other to create a cowl back facing. Now we need to finish the bottom edge here. So just like what we did with the front facing, you can either overlock this edge or double fold and make a straight stitch. I'm going to do the double fold to be consistent with my front facing. Now fold it down on the left side. Pin the side seams in place, and on the right side again, this is the side with the buttons and the stay tape. We turn the wrong side out, making the right sides facing each other. Pin the side seam in place, then stitch them up at 1 cm seam allowance. Trim the corner, turn it right side out and press everything flat nicely, then overlock the side seams. Alrighty, now we're gonna assemble the front and the back together. Put them right sides touching each other. The back piece should start right at the burst dot. Use the notches at the sides to guide you to align them together. Then head to the sewing machine and stitch them up at 1 cm seam allowance. Iron the seams open. Now we're going to attach these little button loops. Fold these little tubes in half and position them at every notch. Then go and run a straight stitch through to secure them in place. We will use the bias binding method to finish those side seams. Grab 3 bias strips that are 3.5 cm wide and then fold one side towards the wrong side at 1 cm and press it flat to create a crease. Repeat this with the 2 other strips. Okay, firstly, put your bias binding on top of the garment with the right sides facing each other, aligning the unfolded edge with the side seam. Start at whatever end you want, but leave a 1 cm gap like this so we can fold and hide it inside later. Keep pinning them together until you reach the other end. Then stitch at 1 cm seam allowance. Bring your garment to the ironing machine. Fold over the bias binding so that it covers the seam allowance. Press the seam and make the bias binding lay flat over the seam allowance. At the end of the binding, fold the top down and then fold the side inside like this to hide the raw edge. Fold the bias binding over the edge of the fabric again so that the bias binding will be completely hidden on the opposite side of the fabric. Press everything flat nicely to prepare the stitching. You will find that sewing at this step will be easy because all of the effort you already made in the ironing step. Sew a straight stitch around 3 mm from the edge of the bias binding and then make sure that your bias binding edge is folded under so that it will be hidden. And this is how the finishing would look like. Now go ahead and repeat the exact steps to complete the bias binding for the left front side seam and the right back side seam. Okay, the only thing left to finish is the hemline and the buttons. Since our dress is cut on bias, it has more stretch and fluidity. We should hanging the dress before hemming to allow the fabric settle and stretch naturally. So after a few hours hanging it on, I redefine the hem so that it's even. Then I trim the hem to the desired level. In this tutorial, I'm gonna show you how to finish the hemline using the baby roll hem technique. So first, fold the hem towards the wrong side by 1.5 centimeters and make a tiny top stitch about 2 or 3 mm from the folded edge. Then trim the excess seam allowance as close to the stitching lines as possible. And then roll the hem up again to the wrong side to create a tiny fold. Now with your roll hem facing up, you're gonna stitch another straight line directly on top of the first one. Press it nicely and there you have it, a beautiful baby roll hem. And the final touch is attaching the buttons. You can use the notch as guide or align the edges to see where the loops fall, then mark the button positions accordingly. And that's it, the dress is completely done. Thank you for sticking with me until the end of this video. Except for the button loose part, which you can easily replace with a thin cord or elastic, the rest is pretty much beginner friendly, so This dress is really a great summer project for everyone. If you enjoyed this tutorial and want to see more videos like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And as always, if you decide to make this dress, please tag me on Instagram or TikTok. I really want to discover your versions of it. Thanks a lot and see you soon. Bye!